We need the space for the kids. A 5-bedroom house is wasted on one person. That was the text my sister-in-law, Monica, sent me at 11:51 p.m. She hadn't asked if she could borrow the lodge. She simply informed me that she had canceled my birthday booking at my own property because her mommy group needed a retreat. Before I could even type a response, my brother Jared's name popped up on the screen reading, "Don't make a scene, Val. The kids are excited." I stared at the phone. It wasn't a request. It was an eviction notice from the house I inherited and paid for. I was turning 32 on Saturday. And apparently, my birthday gift was being told I didn't matter because I didn't have children. I didn't cry. I didn't call them to scream. In my job as a crisis manager, I learned that when someone declares war, you don't fire back immediately. You document. I took a screenshot. I opened my secure cloud drive. Then, I dragged the file into a folder I'd created months ago. I named it Evidence. The next morning, I drove 2 hours to the lodge, telling myself it was just a misunderstanding. I unlocked the front door and headed straight for the hallway at the back to my grandmother's study. It was my sanctuary. The one room I had explicitly locked and declared off limits. The lock was drilled out. I pushed the door open. The smell of fresh chemical fumes hit me first. Then the color. The rich, century-old oak paneling, wood my grandfather had installed by hand, was gone. In its place, a blinding, aggressive neon pink assaulted my eyes. A plastic ball pit sat where the antique mahogany desk used to be, and in the corner, 3 heavy-duty trash bags were stuffed to bursting. I ripped the nearest bag open. My grandmother's first edition hardcovers, rare history books, leather-bound journals, all thrown together like garbage. "Careful," a voice chirped behind me. "Those are fire hazards. Old paper collects dust, and dust triggers asthma." Monica stood in the doorway, holding a paint roller. She didn't look guilty. She looked benevolent, like she was doing me a favor. "You drilled the lock," I said. My voice was dangerously quiet. "We're improving the property, Val," she replied. "This room was dead space. Now it's a playroom." She gestured to the neon walls with the air of a saint. "Real families need space to grow. You wouldn't understand. Living in that glass box in the city. When you have children, you realize that safety and joy are more important than hoarding old things." There it was. The look. The fertility privilege. To Monica, my name on the deed was a clerical error. In her world, reproducing was the only act that granted true citizenship. Because I hadn't birthed a child, I was just a placeholder, a steward. My property rights were theoretical. Her mommy needs were biological mandates that overruled everything else. I wasn't her sister-in-law. I was a servant who hadn't realized my shift had started. I looked down at the floor. Scattered among the paint drop cloths were stacks of envelopes. Utility bills, property tax assessments. My brother Jared hurried into the room, saw me looking at the papers, and swooped down. He stuffed them into his jacket pocket. "Just junk mail, Val," he muttered. "I'll handle it." He wouldn't look me in the eye. I didn't argue. I didn't demand the keys back. I turned on my heel and walked out the front door, the smell of wet paint still clinging to my clothes. I drove straight to the county post office. I filled out a single form, a formal notice of no trespass. I cited unauthorized destruction of property and liability concerns due to unapproved renovations. I addressed it to both Jared and Monica. Then I paid the extra fee for certified mail, return receipt requested. I needed them to sign for it. I needed a government record that they knew they were banned. I watched the clerk stamp the envelope. Thump. The war had officially begun. 2 weeks of silence passed. Then, Saturday morning arrived. I was miles away in my city penthouse, wearing a silk robe and holding a fresh espresso. The notification came through on my iPad. Ding, front door camera. Motion detected. I tapped the screen. The live feed loaded in high definition. There was Monica. She was wearing a matching beige yoga set, flanked by 10 other women carrying mats and overnight bags. She looked like the queen of the suburbs commanding her troops. She marched up to the smart lock and punched in her code. Beep, beep, beep. The lock flashed red. She frowned. Typed it again. Harder this time. Jamming her finger into the keypad. Beep, beep, beep. Red. I watched her smile falter. She turned to her friends, muttered something about tech glitches, and tried a third time. Nothing. The door remained a wall. My phone started ringing. FaceTime. Monica. I accepted the call and leaned back against my velvet sofa, making sure the city skyline was visible behind me. "Val, the lock is broken." Her face filled the screen, flushed and frantic. "I have the whole group here. It's embarrassing. Reset it remotely. Now." I took a slow sip of coffee. The lock isn't broken, Monica. It's updated. What are you talking about? Just open the door. I can't, I said, my voice smooth as glass. I'm just following the new house guidelines. Specifically, rule number 3. She blinked, confusion warring with panic. What? You posted it 2 weeks ago, I reminded her. No kids, no access. You were very clear that single adults are a liability. That was for guests. That was to keep you from bringing random people. Well, I don't have kids, Monica. So by your own logic, I don't have access. And since I am the owner, and I don't have access, neither do you. Are you insane? Her whisper turned into a hiss. Behind her, the other moms were checking their watches and whispering. I have catering coming. I have a yoga instructor driving in. Open the damn door. I revoked all guest tokens to comply with your safety standards, I lied. The system is on lockdown. I hear the Motel 6 by the highway has a pool. Maybe they allow real families there. I hung up. Then I tapped the smart home app and disabled the video feed. The fallout was immediate. Within an hour, my phone blew up. Monica had posted a manifesto on Facebook. No context. Just pure victimhood. She called me a bitter, barren monster who was punishing mothers because she couldn't conceive. Her friends flooded the comments with broken heart emojis and prayers for my empty soul. 10 minutes later, a text from Jared arrived. You crossed a line. My lawyer will be in touch about your interference with my family's enjoyment of the property. I didn't block them. I let the messages stack up in the evidence folder, right next to the picture of the ruined pink room. They thought this was a fight. They didn't realize it was a deposition. A month later, the weather maps turned blood red. A Category 4 hurricane was barreling up the coast. And the meteorologists weren't using words like caution anymore. They were using words like catastrophic and unsurvivable. My penthouse in the city was built to sway with the wind. It was a fortress of steel and reinforced glass, sitting high above the flood zone. But Jared and Monica, they had bought a sprawling McMansion in the suburbs, Zone A, low-lying, marshland. At 2 a.m., my phone vibrated against the nightstand. I answered in the dark. Hello? We need the penthouse code. It was Jared. No greeting, just the tight, high-pitched tone of a man watching water creep up his driveway. The levees are breaching. We're evacuating. The public shelters are open, I said, sitting up. The high school gym is safe. The gym? Monica's voice cut in, shrill and frantic. Have you ever been to a public shelter, Val? It's filthy. There are strangers there. I am not having my children sleep on a cot next to random people. We're coming to you. Text me the code. I turned on the bedside lamp. The light was harsh. You can't stay here. Are you serious? Jared shouted. This is an emergency. I know, I said. And because it's an emergency, I will make an exception to your no access rule. You can use the pull-out sofa in the guest room. It's queen-sized. You'll be safe. And dry. Silence. Thick, heavy silence. Then Monica laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. The sofa? You want my children, the future of this family, to huddle on a sofa while you sleep in a California king by yourself? It's a dry bed, Monica. Take it or leave it. You selfish, barren witch, she spat. The venom in her voice was so pure it almost vibrated through the phone. This is why you're alone. This is why God didn't give you kids. Because you don't know how to love anything but yourself. You give me the master suite code right now, or I swear, you will never see your nephews again. You will die alone in that glass box. I froze. In business, we call this the boundary tax. People like Monica want the premium package, the luxury, the safety, the assets. But they refuse to pay the basic subscription fee of respect. They think family is a coupon that never expires, no matter how much they abuse the cashier. You're right, I said softly. I don't understand. Finally, she huffed. Send the code. No. I mean, I don't understand why you think insults are a currency I accept. I hung up. Then I tapped the contact name. Block caller. I laid back down in my California king bed. Outside, the wind howled, but inside, it was perfectly silent. The storm passed, but the real damage was just beginning. 3 a.m. My phone lit up on the nightstand. Silent alarm triggered. Zone 1. Entry. I opened the app. The feed from the living room camera loaded. They were inside. Jared and Monica were shaking off wet raincoats in my foyer. My nephews were already asleep on the rug. But they hadn't broken a window. They hadn't kicked down the door. Through the window, I saw the taillights of a 24-hour emergency locksmith van pulling away. I zoomed in on the hall table. There it was. The crumpled utility bill Jared had pocketed weeks ago in the pink room. He had used it to prove residency. He had tricked a locksmith into letting them in. It was smart. Evil. But smart. They weren't just refugees from the storm. They were squatters. And once a squatter establishes residency, it takes months to evict them. I didn't call them. I called the precinct directly. 20 minutes later, blue lights flashed through the front window. 2 officers knocked. I switched to the audio feed. "Evening. Officer," Jared said, opening the door. He sounded exhausted. The perfect picture of a stressed father. "Thank God you're here. We evacuated from the flood zone, lost our keys in the rush. Had to call a locksmith." "Is this your property, sir?" "Family home," Monica chimed in, stepping forward with a blanket around her shoulders. "We've lived here for years. Look. Our mail is on the table." The officer lowered his flashlight. "All right. If you have proof of residency and a key, this is a civil matter. We can't kick you out in a hurricane." Jared smirked. A tiny, triumphant twitch of his lip. He thought he had won. He thought the civil matter loophole was his golden ticket. I hit the call dispatch button on my app, patching me through to the officer's radio. "Officer," I said. My voice echoed through the room from the security panel speaker. "This is the homeowner. Ask Mr. Harrison to show you the certified mail receipt he signed 3 weeks ago." Jared froze. The officer looked up at the speaker, then back at Jared. "Ma'am? I just emailed a PDF to your precinct's digital tip line," I continued. "Open it." The officer pulled out his phone. "Document A," I narrated, watching Jared's face turn the color of ash. "A notice of no trespass. Sent via certified mail. Signed by Jared Harrison on the 14th. He legally acknowledged that he is banned from the premises." The officer scrolled. He looked at Jared. "You signed this?" "That was a misunderstanding," Jared stammered. "We're tenants. We have rights. Document B." I cut in. A screenshot from Monica Harrison's public Facebook profile. Dated last month. Read the caption. The officer read it aloud. "Rule 3. No kids. No access. We have no access to this property." "She publicly admitted she does not live there," I said. "Tenancy requires access. She claimed she had none. They broke in using a stolen bill and a tricked locksmith after signing a legal ban." The room went dead silent. The only sound was the rain hammering against the roof. The officer put his phone away. His posture shifted. The sympathetic public servant vanished. The cop appeared. "Sir." "Turn around. Hands behind your back." "What?" "No," Monica shrieked, grabbing Jared's arm. "We have children sleeping here. You can't do this." "You signed a trespass notice and then hired a locksmith to bypass security," the officer said, snapping the cuffs on Jared's wrists. The metal click was loud and final. "That's not a civil dispute, ma'am. That's aggravated criminal trespass and burglary. Call Valerie," Jared yelled as they marched him out. "Val, tell them to stop." "I can't," I said through the speaker. "The system is on lockdown." I watched them get dragged into the rain. The squad car doors slammed. I took a sip of water and finally, for the first time in weeks, turned off the lights to sleep. Jared and Monica posted bail by noon on Tuesday. My parents put up their own retirement home as collateral. The audacity arrived in my inbox at 4 p.m. Subject line: urgent transfer. The email from Jared didn't contain an apology. It contained a demand. "Val, this has gone too far. The criminal defense attorney needs a $25,000 retainer immediately. Transfer the quarterly trust distribution today. We have bills." He still didn't get it. He thought the Bank of Valerie was still open. He thought the family trust, which I managed as the sole trustee, was his personal piggy bank. Regardless of his behavior, I didn't reply to the email. I opened the trust bylaws. I highlighted Article 9, Section C, the discretionary distribution clause. Then I had my lawyer draft a formal notice. "Dear beneficiaries, pursuant to my fiduciary duty, I am invoking the suspension of benefits clause. The trust is prohibited from releasing funds to any beneficiary currently under indictment for crimes committed against the estate or its assets. All quarterly distributions are frozen, effective immediately, until all criminal charges are resolved and full restitution is confirmed." I hit send. I leaned back in my chair and watched the cursor blink. It was a perfect, vicious circle of consequences. To unlock the trust fund, they needed the criminal charges dropped. To get the charges dropped, they needed to pay me $15,000 in restitution for the destroyed study. But they couldn't pay the restitution, because I had frozen the trust fund. I had effectively locked their lifestyle in a cage and swallowed the key. They would have to bleed their own savings, the money they used for mommy retreats and country club fees, to fix the damage they caused. 2 weeks later, the contractors finished their work at the lodge. The neon pink was gone. The smell of harsh chemical paint was replaced by the scent of beeswax polish and old paper. I sat in my grandmother's restored leather chair, running my hand over the smooth oak desk. The room was quiet. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text from my mother. "You are destroying this family over money." I turned the phone face down. I wasn't destroying anything. I was just finally charging them the correct price for admission. The legal system, I discovered, doesn't care about mommy blogs or how many likes you get on Facebook. It cares about signed documents and property deeds. Because I had frozen their access to the trust fund, Jared and Monica couldn't afford the high-powered defense attorney they wanted. They were stuck with a public defender who took one look at the notice of no trespass and the locksmith's statement and told them to cut a deal. They pled guilty to criminal trespass and destruction of property. The judge sentenced them to 2 years of probation and 400 hours of community service. But the financial judgment was the real nail in the coffin. The court ordered restitution in the amount of $15,240.50 for the damage to the lodge, plus legal fees. Since they couldn't access the trust, they had to liquidate their assets. The boat Jared bought last summer, sold. Monica's designer handbags? Poshmark. They moved out of the flood-damaged McMansion and into a 2-bedroom rental on the other side of town. The social fallout was even faster. The mommy group didn't rally around Monica, they devoured her. Once the mugshots were public, the same women who had attended her yoga retreat blocked her number. It turns out, social climbers don't like to associate with people who have criminal records. 6 months later, a letter arrived at my penthouse. It had no return address, but I recognized the handwriting. It was shaky, frantic scrawl. I opened it over the trash can. It was a 4-page manifesto from Monica. She didn't apologize. Instead, she pivoted. She wrote about how God forgives, and how family is about second chances. She said the boys missed their Aunt Val. She said they were struggling to pay rent, and that if I just released one trust distribution, they could get back on their feet. She ended it with, "Don't let your pride destroy these children." I stood there in my kitchen, holding the paper. A year ago, that letter would have crushed me. I would have felt the familiar heavy cloak of guilt. I would have wondered if I was being too harsh. I would have written the check just to make the heavy feeling go away. But this time, I felt the texture of the cheap paper. I saw the desperate slant of the ink, and I felt nothing. No anger, no guilt. Just the dull indifference you feel when a telemarketer calls during dinner. I didn't burn it. That's too dramatic. I didn't frame it. That's too obsessive. I just dropped it into the recycling bin, right on top of a flyer for pizza coupons. That weekend, I went back to the lodge. It was my 33rd birthday. This time, the driveway wasn't empty. It was packed with cars. Not my family's cars. My people's cars. My college roommate, Sarah, was there with her husband. My mentor from the crisis firm was on the porch opening a bottle of vintage red. My neighbor, who had watched the house while the contractors worked, was setting up the grill. We sat in the restored study that night. The neon pink paint was a memory. Covered by fresh, warm oak, we drank wine and laughed until our sides hurt. Nobody asked me for money. Nobody insulted my life choices. Nobody demanded I shrink myself so they could feel bigger. I looked around that room and realized the air was different. It was lighter. The boundary tax had been paid, and now, I was reaping the dividends. So, let's talk about what actually happened here. I know a lot of you are watching this and thinking, good for her. But deep down, you're terrified to do what I did. You're thinking, I can't cut them off. They're my blood. They're my parents. They're my brother. I need you to listen to me closely. We are raised with this toxic myth that family is a suicide pact. We are taught that because someone shares your DNA, they have a lifetime pass to disrespect you, rob you, and abuse you. And your job is to just take it. We are told that keeping the peace is a virtue. It is not. Keeping the peace is just a fancy way of saying subsidizing their war against you. I learned 3 rules from the wreckage of my family, and I want you to write them down. Rule number 1. Blood is biology. Loyalty is choice. You do not owe anyone a relationship. If a stranger broke into your house and insulted you, you would call the police. Why is it acceptable just because the intruder shares your last name? You have the right to divorce your family. Rule number 2. Embrace the villain role. When you finally stand up to a narcissist, they will not say, "You're right. I'm sorry." They will scream that you are crazy, cruel, and selfish. Monica called me a barren witch. My parents called me heartless. Let them. If protecting your peace makes you the villain in their story, then be the villain. Wear that title like armor. It means you are winning. Rule number 3. Access is currency. Your time, your energy, your money, and your home, these are your currency. Do not spend them on people who bankrupt your spirit. If they bite the hand that feeds them, stop feeding them. Let them starve. I am Valerie. I am 33 years old. I live in a house that is quiet, safe, and mine. Look at your keychain right now. Who have you given a key to? Who only brings mud into your house? Change the locks.